Hello, Spirit and Truth Podcast. Today, we are excited to have in the month of June, Phil Radmer. He is going to talk to us about a legacy of giving. I'm very excited for this podcast. I personally love personal finance and church finance and stewardship in general, but I would say Brother Phil is definitely a stewardship captain. He is our resident Dave Ramsey, and I remember taking Dave Ramsey with him when I was young, and then I took it again later, and then I led it one year, and it's very helpful. It's not all Dave Ramsey. Obviously, much of it is just Bible in his life, but we're going to talk to Brother Phil today, and we're going to get a lot of information on a legacy of giving. And we're kind of doing this, it's June, so we're thinking of Father's Day and fathers leaving behind a legacy. So that's where we're going with this. So if you're ready, let's jump right in. So, Brother Phil, how you doing?
Good.
Good. Well, let's go into it. So, number one, what does it mean to you personally to live a life marked by generosity?
Well, personally, I feel blessed of the Lord. First time I went to a Pentecostal church in L.A., I don't remember the message, but I do remember the love and the spirit I felt in the service.
Cool.
At their offering, I had $17 in my pocket at that time, which was all that I had at the time. I gave it all because I felt so glad to be there. I didn't even realize at that time people were giving tithes and much more than that. I believe God honored that sacrifice and gave me a desire to be generous to his church.
Cool. This next one we're going to go into is, what does it mean to you biblically to live a life marked by generosity?
Biblically, it is a principle that Jesus felt strongly about. He taught his disciples to live a life of generosity and then to teach others to live a life of generosity. He taught us in his word to be a giver and not a taker, to share and not be greedy by the love of money.
Yeah, and I know Brother Phil's probably aware of this statistic, but in America, only around 2.5% is given to churches. And we know the Bible, biblically, it goes 10%. But really, to be a generous giver, you really want to get over 10%. Because the point is to be generous, not just to follow the law. Yeah. So, that's a great way to say it.
And also, Dave Ramsey says 2.5% is not a tenth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's very true. Yeah. And I know from the pastoral side, we always think about the fact that, man, if even just 10% cave in the whole Americas, for a church, what could be done for the kingdom of God?
Right.
That's just something that we just think about sometimes. We don't dwell on it, but we think about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So let's go to number 2. Was there a moment or season in your life when God clearly taught you something about giving?
As you can imagine, before I was born again of the water and the Spirit, I was self-centered and was out to get whatever I could for myself, even to the point of stealing stuff. When I started going to church, my first real good friend by the name of Danny McGee, who, by the way, is still my business partner after 30-plus years, was a very generous person. I said, I'd like to be like that, but don't have any money right now. That desire stayed with me from the beginning, and God kept on blessing me and kept on increasing my salaries to be a blessing to others.
So how did it shape your approach going forward?
Now, as a retired saint, I've always had the outlook that generosity is for a lifetime. I've known people that paid tithes on their gross paychecks all their life and then quit at retirement and said they don't need to pay anything else because they've paid on their retirement money. I've always thought that whatever touches your hands, 10% belongs to God. So I feel there is no difference in giving between working and being retired. God will keep you until the day he calls you home.
Yeah. And I know we live in Orange County, and I know, Brother Phil, you've been in other places, in Michigan, I believe, and probably other places. But in Orange County, we know there's a lot of spirit of greed here. There's a lot of people just here to make money. They just booked it to Hollywood, or they ended up here, or something like that. And I've been telling my hyphens recently something I read or heard in a sermon was, if you feel like you struggle with greed, then give. And that's something you can do to kind of counteract if you feel like, man, I'm feeling greedy or whatever. I feel like the spirit of greed is messing with me. Give, that'll kind of counteract those feelings. Because if you don't give, the greed just builds,
Right.
And like you're saying about this, it's more blessed to give than to receive, and to be cheerful about it. Yeah. How can Christians discern between wise stewardship and radical generosity?
Well, tithing is stewardship. The church is powered by the tithes of the saints.
Yeah.
Even in the Old Testament, God provided a way for priests and workers of the sanctuary to be taken care of so that they could dedicate themselves to spiritual needs of the people and the temple. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, radical giving is offerings and special gifts from the heart and your inner being for the needs of others all around us. Mm-hmm. I was at a tax appointment one time, and I told the CPA, who was not a Christian, that I had given a person $1,000 to help bury a person's mother. Mm. She said to me, "That's not a tax write-off. That's from the heart." Mm. Okay, and then I thought, well, that's a great way of looking at giving, you know.
Yeah.
So that also lines up with the Bible in 2 Corinthians 9:7, which states, "Each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver."
Yeah. No, I love that. And not under compulsion, it's key. Because if you're just giving because you feel the stress of, oh, what if someone else gave more than me or whatever, if you're being competitive about it, all that is just not, that's going to muddy the waters of your spiritual growth if that's how you're giving. And and like you're saying, I know I'm young and I've had to get to the place where I'm very comfortable giving more than 10%, but that's because I know God deserves all of it, really. And 100% is His.
Yes.
We just happen to give back 10 or more.
We're stewards of it all.
Yeah. So, but once you can change your mindset, you don't feel, like as a young person, like, man, I've heard a lot of my young adults say, if I just didn't tithe, I could pay for my bills or I could do this and that. Well, no, you can pay for your bills because God's blessed you with a job.
Exactly.
He's taking care of you. So, like you're saying, not under compulsion is so important. And what role does faith play in that? There's that tension between wise stewardship, but then being radical with your generosity.
Right. God helps you use your faith He has given you by giving you stepping stones as you grow in maturity. You give a little and He'll come through because He's faithful. Then you can increase giving because you know He's been faithful before and He'll supply your needs again.
Yeah. He's got a good track record.
He does.
Yeah, we trust God.
He does.
Yeah. So now this is kind of getting right into the title of the day. What do you believe it looks like to leave a legacy of giving for the next generation?
A legacy is something you hope will be instilled in the next generation. That's why we're having our campaign. That's why we're trying to move to a bigger building, to house more people for the next generation, especially our kids. And it only comes by example and not by words with no action.
Yeah.
Proverbs said in 25:14, "Whoso boasteth himself of a false gift is like clouds and wind without rain." We had a special pledge offering for a church we are now in. Some close relatives were at the church on that day, and they knew what I had pledged because it was an open verbal pledge. They told me I was crazy for giving that much money away, but the legacy will live on in their minds, and one day they will be able to see the world-changing principle of giving.
Yeah.
I can't do this podcast without mentioning, though, how Dave Ramsey wants us to leave a legacy to the generation also, to the next generation. He wants us to live like no one else so that later we can live and give like no one else.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and that's a big thing today because I think we're seeing a giant transition in the world where there's a lot of your generation kind of either retiring or getting close to retirement, and then the big question is what's going to happen next?
Right.
Is the next generation going to step up and do this or do that? Or are they going to push off? Go their own way? So I think this legacy of giving, like you're saying, especially for us Christians, it's so important because my daughter's 2, but I want Nora. I want to leave her something.
Right.
I want to leave her something someday. That's why we do things like we're talking about. We're safe with our finances now, so she has a future. And I know sometimes I talk to my wife and we're being more careful with our groceries or whatever, and it's like, man, it's a little stressful, but it's worth it because we got to remember what you're doing later. And I didn't even think about it. What you said. This building we're in today, it was someone saved for this.
Yes.
Someone bought this, and somebody built this, and and I know that happened. I saw it, but I never thought about it like we are today in this campaign because we're doing it again, because God's promises have been so mighty, his blessings have been so mighty, we're ready for more. But someone had to be ready for more the first time for my generation to be here today. So it's just, when you really think about it, it's pretty wild. It's awesome.
Yeah, it also stems from wise spending. People want what their neighbor has, or the old expression, what the Joneses have. That has to kind of be curbed on the greedy side, because it's hard to do, because there's so much peer pressure, there's so many advertisements pounding at you and things like that it's hard to not do that. And again, it's easy on the Amazon, the one-click Amazon. You
buy now.
Buy now. So it's very easy to do that. But to have a legacy, you really need to be disciplined and sacrifice in that area.
Yeah. Yeah, and that discipline and sacrifice, it can be difficult, but again, you've got to have a clear vision for what you're going towards. I think that's the toughest thing for young people, is they don't always have a clear vision. Why am I doing this? Why am I going to college? Why am I whatever?
Right.
But if you really look at that with a clear vision, you have plenty of reasons to succeed. But and then we're going to do this last one. Can you share a Bible passage that's shaped your view of generosity and what it reveals about the heart of God?
True. Actually, it's a little long, but it'll go for it. One of my favorite scriptures found in the book of Matthew, and I go to this a lot, and it reads, it's Matthew 25:31 through 40. In the final judgment, it reads, "When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the holy angels with him, then he will sit down on his throne of his glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate one from another, as the shepherds divide the sheep from the goats. And he will set upon the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right hand, 'Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me.' Then the righteous will answer him, saying, 'Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you? Or when did we see you sick or in prison and come to you?' And the king will answer and say to them, 'Assuredly, I say to you, as much as you did to one of the least of these my brethren, you did it to me.'" So I don't condemn those that give money or food to homeless people or beggars or on the street, or those even addicted to drugs. I do it myself, because Jesus said, when you are being good to them, you are being good to me.
That's good. Yeah, and I think, like you're saying, sometimes people forget why we're doing this. It's like, well, they're gonna go buy drugs or whatever. And if that's your conviction, we're not saying don't do it or don't do it or whatever. Right. But remember, the point of all this is we want to be generous. Right. We want to be like Jesus. Jesus, he didn't think about, are we able to give this? He gave it. Whatever he could, he gave it. Right. And his disciples, they put everything together. And we're not saying we're gonna do that as a church, put all of our money together, but but they put everything together so that they could do more for the kingdom. And that's what we do when we pay our tithe, when we give, is we're not thinking, well, did I get everything I wanted from the church? That's not the right mindset. It's God, here it is, and you multiply it. And so I know. Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
There's still part B.
Oh, you got part B? Go for it.
Okay. So what
it reveals about the heart of God?
Okay.
Yeah.
The heart of God is that we are one with the Father and have the mindset to do the will of the Father in love and generosity. Proverbs 19:7 said, "If you help the poor, you are lending to the Lord, he will repay you."
Amen. All right. Well, I do want to make a plug. Every year we try to offer Dave Ramsey. Somebody runs it. So if you have not gone through Dave Ramsey, it will help you leave a legacy of giving. I promise you, because even if you just get the budgeting, you're gonna get so much blessing in your life. But if you get everything else, you're gonna be on top of the world. I'm telling you. So we got to be good stewards, like we've talked with Brother Phil about today. Obviously, Lord, bless us, give us raises and promotions, but He's got to trust us to be able to steward those well.
That's right.
He doesn't. God's not going to give you $1 million if you can't handle 10,000. You know, so we got to start with what we've got, and God'll grow that. So I'm thankful for Brother Phil. I know I've asked him a lot of questions in life before about these subjects, and we're very blessed at our church to have him. And we're excited for next month, and we will see you then. But God bless. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.